Hello. This video addresses the benefits when practicing scales meaningfully. Benefits for bowing, sound, left hand, plus our mind. Technical benefits don't happen because we play scales or studies, but because how we play them. And that's what I will focus on today. Increasing our awareness what we really do with bow arm and left hand, plus improving intonation and sound quality. Not starting our practice being overwhelmed by a lot of new material as it occurs in pieces. The precondition is that we play the scale of the day by memory as soon as we can. When we read, we focus on our eyes. Our ears come second. But intonation and sound control happen by ear. Reading notes or fingerings can take away from listening, as it does looking at our fingers. Secondly, the benefits appear only when playing slowly, without rush. Playing fast scales fosters a neglect of intonation, plus neglecting sound quality by putting all the efforts into playing fast. The result of practicing scales fast is getting used to play low average quality. As I experienced it, interestingly, most examiners are happy with low quality. If just bowings and fingerings are correct and the correct notes are recognizable, that's it. Like one examiner said, scales need to rattle. If you don't want to sound permanently like a student, this unmusical way of playing needs to change. Playing scales slowly, particularly when we start our practice, can foster a good sound, good intonation, control of position changes, and as I will show, a beautiful vibrato. Doesn't that sound more useful? Let's start. The first scale should best be in 3 or 4 beats per note. I take 3 beats. On the first beat, I focus on pure intonation. The second beat should have a nice vibrato if we can. The third beat can be shortened to prepare the next note's intonation, including shifting. It should always start from a still bow sitting on the string. The bow should never lift in a scale, not at the nut or frog or at the tip. The best intonation we get by looking far away, into the furthest corner of the room, or outside, best above eye level. That our eyes are not involved with the cello and our physical activity or notes. You might have noticed when you have, before going to bed, music playing, you switch the light off, and as soon as you switch the light off, the music appears to be louder. And that is because our eyes take so much energy away in perception that our ears perceive less. And once the light is switched off, we hear better. There's a very interesting video of the legendary cellist Emanuel Feuermann. And that's the only video which survived. And he stares in the distance, and people always say they think he might be blind or something like this. But it's not true. He looks in the distance because he's listening to himself. And it's fantastically played. And I leave the link in the text below. After saying that, usually the first part of the scale, we don't do everything right. The first notes don't sound that good, and we might forget looking up. That's normal. It belongs to what's called warming up, or getting centered. If we could start fully centered, we wouldn't need to do it. And here's another benefit. The slow scale is in fact also a very fast working meditation, like magic. In 3 minutes or 3.5, it takes our mind away from everyday issues, like emails, shopping, house duties, what people said or think, and so on. In normal meditation, we focus maybe on our navel breathing in and out. When playing a slow scale, we focus away from our body. Focus on the beauty of sound and pure intonation, looking away. It not only makes us doing things better or right, it opens up a pleasure of clear intonation and good sound, transforms our mind from an obsession with worries to a person indulging into a world of sound, moments of bliss. And now to sound quality. The beginning of each note should just be sound, no extra noise. Not rough, not crushing, not sharp or hazy, just sound. I show. First, I start a bit too fast. It doesn't come properly. So I start slower, but it was crushing, it was too hard. Well, the first rough sound was created by starting straight in full speed. The string couldn't develop sounding as a whole, so we heard a mixture of sharp sounds. In fact, these unwanted sounds are unwanted high harmonics. Some that we can identify them. They are harmonics of the C. The second crushing sound was created by starting slow but too heavy. When we play, the string needs to vibrate under the bow. Right, left, very fast. For the open A string, 220 times per second. For the C string, about 80 times. When I start it too heavy, I don't allow the string to vibrate back. The string tries, and it stutters when it can, and couldn't do more. And you can see it. You can see how the string gets pulled in one direction, tries to vibrate, and can't make it. Well, how to get it right? When we pluck a string, we do intuitively the right thing. We pull the string to one side, then let it go, and allow the string to vibrate back and forth. So we have to be very careful. We need to pull the string first into a starting position that it can vibrate, a slight tension, a little pull. If you do it too light, the string will start vibrating before, and as we heard, it will create harmonics. So we can't start in speed. So we need to do it a little bit heavier, but not too heavy. So we pull the string, but only that much that the string manages to vibrate back and without being held back. It's a delicate procedure. There is a tiny pull, a tiny pluck, and otherwise the string doesn't start. And manage that it continues sounding and doesn't sound too heavy. It's very dicey procedure and needs practice. If you can do it only at the cut-out area of the cello, there's space for the bow. And that's the reason why the cutout is there. The people who invented the cello were very clever. A good sound is produced or fails at the beginning of each note, 1,000 times in one practice session, with the start of every single new bow. And it's worth to focus on that. And that's the reason why I play each note first in 3 beats. To control the sound, I shorten the sounding time of the 3rd beat, play the diminuendo, and ending up in a standstill with the bow stopping naturally without changing anything. The weight of the hand or pressure should not change then, or we create an extra noise and lose control. It's the art of doing nothing. So if you start a scale, stop, do nothing, and continue. And if you do nothing, then the pressure that we had to create a sound makes sure that the sound will come again. To ensure not to do little noises with the fingers or hand, we ignore the fingers. The brain of the bow movement should sit in the elbow joint. Move the control center there. The sound quality might improve instantly. And now, a never mentioned fact. When I start a solo concert, I use a simple trick to magnify the control of this delicate moment. I play the very first note in the process of breathing out. You may have heard that a mosquito can only sting when we breathe out. When we hold our breath or breathe in, even our skin is tense, and so is our brain and our muscles. Have a try and start a bow stroke in the process of breathing out. It amplifies our perception of what is going on. We can suddenly perceive details, and then we can manage that moment with a greater clarity. I take a piece which I started often concerts with, is Rachmaninoff Vocalize, and I breathe in, and in the process of breathing out, I start. And so on. After the initial breathing out, before the first note, never stop breathing. Stopping to breathe makes us freeze, getting stiff. Stiffness let us stay out of tune instead of correcting. But we need to correct what's wrong as soon as possible, because every note after relies on the note before, and it can get progressively worse. And here's some advice from Maestro Pablo Casals. An interviewer stated admiringly to Casals, "You are the only cellist I've never ever heard a note out of tune. How did you get to that?" And Casals burst out laughing, saying, "I play so often out of tune. You can never be sure how your hand shifts or stretches on a day." And the interviewer said, "But I've never heard that." And Casals said, "I'm very good at correcting very quickly." So if you're out of tune, don't pull a face, don't moan, don't freeze, don't stay there. Continue breathing, just move on, don't hesitate, correct quickly, no fuss. When I play just a scale and I start anywhere, a C scale. There's C. And ended up in C. And I started every note anywhere. We never know how it's on a day. Correct. We all make mistakes. Coming back to the slow scale. At the end of the slow scale, my mind is already 100% with the cello. I recommend strongly to practice scales, at least in slow speed, as soon as possible over 3 or even 4 octaves. And the reason is, so many cellists get virtually a panic attack when there's suddenly a passage in the high ranges. Get familiar as early as possible in the high positions. In a slow speed, it is not scary, and most cellos sound very nice up there. It is also a great preparation for the thumb position. It gives a good feeling and avoids panic. It also trains to play more towards the bridge according to how high up we are, which is vital to a good sound. As a guide, 1 octave higher than the open string, like, is exactly on the millimeter, half the length of the string. And that requires that the contact point of the bow, like an open A, when doesn't sound very good. So, because this is half the length, I need to go closer to the bridge. Sounds good. When I go octave higher, even half of this distance to the bridge, according to the length of the sounding string. In the left hand, don't leave the thumb on one spot with hand moving up. Go always with the one, like a. So it's about a tone underneath. So don't forget it down here and have it lightly, then you can move easily. And you can do it before you learn the thumb position. So many players take for granted that when the correct finger is played in the correct position, that note is in tune. Of course, it's not true. There's no such guarantee. In the high positions, we don't have even names for the position, just thumb position. And we need to listen out for the correct note and correct that note. I had once an interesting experience to this, and that's why I recommend to play up high. I had once a student who played quite well, but as many, not really in tune. And he couldn't sing in tune either. I was worried starting the thumb position, where even the guideline which position you are is not there anymore. And then something very strange happened. From that day on, or week I must say, he suddenly listened to his intonation, even in the lower positions. And within a few weeks, he could suddenly sing in tune. It was a breakthrough in listening. The knowledge of fingers and positions was a false security that a note was actually in tune. One needs to be exactly in tune, not only play a certain note. Now, after the slow scale, I play the same scale faster. I play 2 bows per octave, and the key note 2 beats and the others. And so on. I just mentioned, a lot of exercise books recommend also to practice the scale also by using just one finger like. I would not recommend that. Most get stiff on that finger, lose their hand posture and get out of tune anyway. It is much better to play a scale aimed at swimming around as I did before, by purpose a bit out of tune, in correcting every note as quickly as possible to perfect pitch. I might mention some of my students love a pattern like C, D, D, E, like. And so on, particularly when they're beginners. If you're a beginner, it's actually not bad because you separate starting a bow and changing your fingers. It's quite enjoyable. I need to mention also the dynamics of learning. If you play a scale, we not only practice the fingerings and bowings, but we practice how we play them. And what I mean is, when we play scales, unengaged, with a bad sound, boring, just because we have to do it, we practice playing boring with a bad sound. And we practice that. I noticed this in a concert performance. It was mostly a brilliant performance of a Beethoven sonata, piano sonata. Then occurred a passage with scales in octave parallels. And suddenly the music went out of this person and I felt like I was listening to a student practicing scales at home. As musical as this performer was, he had trained to play scales without musical content. So even on stage, in a concert, he couldn't fill it with music. Whatever we play, it is unmusical, it sinks into us. We want to play that every note is actually not only in tune, that has a good sound, and that is engaged with the beauty of sound. And if we forget that, we learn playing either stiff, boring, bad sound. We learn that. And now I come to the different treatment of the strings. The starting speed of the bow is to be slower on the lower strings, particularly on C. Whereas on A, the starting speed it comes virtually straight away. This detail of treating every string different is one of the main elements to get a good sound. And to keep in mind, there's a very simple guide. Just look at the strings. The C is big, so it reacts slow. Slower bow in its heavier treatment because it's thicker. It's more weight for the thick string, doesn't react at all close to the bridge. The A string is thin. It reacts immediately, can take a fast speed, but gets easily crushed because it's just a tiny, thin string. So play lightly. And pressure close to the fingerboard, as I said, can sound dreadful. So be careful coming close to the fingerboard on the A string. I mentioned before to think from the elbow for the bow movement. And I emphasize on the C string, it feels like the elbow is pushed high by the bow movement. So when you start, the elbow goes up and you end up at the tip with quite some pressure from the elbow. That gives you the power to make a strong sound. Just have a try. And it looks like that the bow points actually into the room, into the left corner. We need to keep in mind that we play parallel to the bridge and not parallel to the ground, like many play on the C string like this. But it is parallel to the bridge, and the bow has to go into the left. Whereas on the A string, we need to go out, and it feels like we go to the right into the room. If you don't have long arms like me, I need to tilt my cello that I cannot all get a straight bow on the A string. So my cello is a tiny bit twisted. If you have long arms, it doesn't matter, you can have the cello out here. As to a general understanding of the bow, playing the full bow is a bit like riding a bicycle. Getting gradually up to speed, at the end slowing down again, coming to a standstill by resting, just stopping. And always being on the road, on the string. Then starting again at the tip without changing anything in our hand. This is particularly important for the C string and also for G. At the tip, the bow has effectively no weight. So we can play with weight at the nut. But here, our weight just falls down our leg, there's nothing. So we need actually transfer pressure from the elbow via the pointer finger on the string. Every cello, every brand of string, and every bow requires slightly different treatment. And there's no textbook with accurate instruction. Try your instrument out. Listen, judge, and keep in mind what works. If you want to improve your vibrato, I recommend vibrate in the slow scale on the second beat out of 3. Don't start straight with vibrato, it gets tense. And don't push the length of the vibrato. Let it finish in a natural and relaxed way. 1 beat and a bit is enough. On the low strings, use a slower vibrato. On the A string, particularly in higher position, the vibrato needs to be faster. Whereas a vibrato on C string would sound shivery. Like when you have on C string, on A string, that might be too slow. So but on C string it sounds a bit funny. How can we correct it? It's actually quite simple. You tighten your biceps and it goes suddenly fast. I need to mention, if you play a slow scale, and I turn it a little bit around, the thumb for a note which has 3 beat can be anywhere. So you put it where it's comfortable. Then when you extend, for example, the thumb just moves where it's most comfortable. When the 4 comes, the thumb moves where it's most comfortable. And it doesn't stick to the rule the finger is under the 2 or between 1 and 2. It doesn't matter. And for your vibrato, you want it most comfortable. So, and vibrato you can only do on longer notes. So it doesn't matter where the thumb really is. But as soon as it goes faster, the thumb has its position linked to the second finger. But in these fast runs, you anyway can't use vibrato. So there's a clear distinction. And now to shifting. During the rest in the 3rd beat of the slow scale, prepare the next note in advance, ready for the next note in tune. And this relies on what I call the imaginary fingerboard. Condition is not to look at the fingers. It has to come by imaginary judgment. I have passages which I played for the first time during the night in bed, imagining the fingerboard and playing. The next morning I went to the cello and played it for the first time perfectly. It relies on the feeling that when you imagine a distance in shift or stretch, you imagine how that would sound. It doesn't come straight away, but it develops. Imagining in your head without looking far away, never looking at your fingers. And now to the last 3 notes of the highest octave, particularly with 4 octaves. The semitones get so narrow that a finger is bigger than a semitone. For the last 3 notes, therefore, I keep the 1 down, keeping the spot, and by doing so, keep the correct intonation of that note for the way back. Then comes the 2, and the 2 has to give way for the 3. When the 3 is in tune on the way back, the 2 needs to get pushed against the 3 to get sharp enough. That can unsettle the 1. So the 1 has to be kept firm on the spot. I just show it. And I go to an A and play the last 3 notes of a C scale. So now the next 3 would be too sharp. So therefore I need to push the 2 out of the way. And then when I push the 2 down, it will be too flat. So push the 3 out of the way, but the 1 is still there. And that gives you the guarantee that the 1 stays there, and you will learn as well how much you have to push, particularly if you have a solid finger there. And last, something important never mentioned. Don't think about your neighbors, what they might hear. The majority of neighbors have not as good ears as you. Most neighbors have constantly some noise going on. TV, earphones, radio, something on the computer, talking, machines. Also, most people like the cello. And if you're really worried, ask them, and you will be surprised how little they hear. To finish, I will play my complete scales program. And I play D major. I play first slow, 3 beats per note, and on the second beat always vibrato. Then second time faster, each octave in 2 bows, like the key note longer, and so on. And the third set, 1 octave per bow, and again the key note longer. But still, it has not to rush, because if rushed, it will increase insecurity and loss of intonation.